And the brief was to hold for 1,000 early year children from infant to 4 years old. And well, they needed it in a hurry, so they needed to be built in 10 and a half months, and the area GFA was 10,000 meters square. Okay, so the project is located in a typical housing estate, what we call HDB in Singapore, a newer housing estate called Punggol. The site is fairly flat and square, which resulted in the formulating of the form as well in a circular form. It's surrounded by high-rise HDB estates, and particularly otherwise it's on a flat field. So when we were first commissioned the project, we were asking ourselves, what does a childcare really mean? Three aspects came to mind. It has to be a conducive learning environment for the young children. It has to be a comfortable environment, and of course, safety is paramount for the young kids. Translating these three aspects into the brief itself, what we learned from interacting with the early childhood educators was that young children actually learn very differently from primary school kids or secondary school kids. It is at their young age is really about experiencing the body movement, tactile sensation, sensory and auditory learning. So there's something that we try to incorporate within our architecture. About the environment, we try to create a more sustainable building by leveraging on natural airflow as much as possible with ingress, controlled rain ingress, and as well as daylight. Vehicular management, I'll talk a little bit about it, that is the safety portion. Okay, so the very first thing that hit us was, how do we design for a childcare that can contain 1,000 kids? Because imagine the amount of circulation, the amount of classrooms needed. So one of the first things we did was to separate it into 3 quadrants, okay, for easier management. And in fact, the operators themselves decided to have 3 principals, each overlooking about 300 kids, 330 kids for this whole childcare center. So also, the other thing that was very much in our mind was the safety, because imagine, we imagine from the hours of 7 a.m. to say 9 or 10 a.m., there may be the worst case scenario, there may be up to 1,000 cars coming in and out of this place. So to us, the concept of child safety is really important. So that made us create this form, circular form, which there will be vehicular circulation on the external perimeter, and passing through the buffer zone, it will be totally vehicular free inside. So that resulted in the circular form. The other thing that is we needed to bear in mind was this idea of what we call disease outbreak, because if you may know, or you may have kids, send your kids to childcare centers, sometimes things like hand, foot, mouth disease may break out, and if it happens, the childcare, the classroom of that particular kid the classmates may need to be quarantined. So is there any alternative way to access the other classrooms without bypassing this quarantine classroom? So this is something that we bear in mind as well as we design. Looking back, I think we are all in this COVID period. This idea of segregation, natural ventilation actually proved very useful for the idea of quarantine. The idea of scale is something we considered, because if we lay out the entire childcare classroom in a circular form, there will be a 40-meter diameter central courtyard. Is it too large and too intimidating for young kids? So to that end, we decided to segment it into 3 smaller quadrants and put the multipurpose hall right in the middle. And the 3 smaller quadrants is what you see in the photo. All 3 different functions. This is for early childhood playground, water play, the second quadrant, and the third quadrant is basically an entrance court. Together with that, the idea of natural ventilation, to shelter the whole courtyard and air condition it would really use up too much energy. And the idea of using natural ventilation augmented by HVLS fans, that's what we explored. So given the diagram of this circular form, we decided to break it into 3 portions and allow natural air to come through. In the section wise, you will also see that sheltering the entire courtyard is a huge Teflon roof with the center oculus actually open to sky. The Teflon roof, it hovers around 5 meters above the RC roof on the 3rd level, such that natural airflow can come through. And in fact, during a thunderstorm, the rain can actually come through the central oculus and to the garden right in the middle. This is something that we were very conscious of. We didn't want to create an environment where the kids are totally separated from what's happening outside. If it's a heavy rain, they should feel it. And if there's a breeze going through, it should flow through the building itself. This is a space right under the central oculus, the multi-purpose room. And if you could see further in the photos itself, the 2 arch, actually now it's glass over, but these are flexible partitions, glass partitions. So in the whole center can in fact operate in a naturally ventilated mode. So not only this multi-purpose hall, but all the classrooms are able to operate just under fan mode. A view standing on the roof, looking down at the multi-purpose hall and what we call the three-prong bridge, which the top is actually used for play, and the central oculus that is open to sky. So this idea of being connected to the natural environment is really important to us. The other good thing about using Teflon is really you still feel like it is you are outdoors because the quality of light is very pleasant and diffuse, but of course you are sheltered from the elements when it rains. Plan-wise, it is actually a very simple party diagram. It needed to be very simple because this whole building needed to be built in 10, 11 months. So if you notice the classrooms, they are all typical modules able to be replicated at high speed. And primarily, there are just 3 circulation cores throughout. That was the first. This is the 2nd story. And right in the middle, it's that courtyard that I mentioned earlier. So the entrance foyer with self-check kiosks, which the children and parents will check in with iPads and do temperature scans before they are let through. And once you come through, this is the first entrance court that will greet you. So it's really a very expensive, high-level volume. We wanted to create something cheerful with the green and the play slides to greet the children every day when they come to school. So the idea of movement is really also very much throughout the building. So like I mentioned, the entrance court has 2 slides because we were imagining perhaps when you know at 6 or 7 p.m. when the children were waiting for the parents to come, they can actually entertain themselves here. Also, the whole building is really interspersed with playgrounds throughout the internal as well as the external of the building. So this is the water play. And the idea of a ramp, again, we wouldn't want the majority of the young kids to climb staircases. So we have a continuous ramp from first leading up to the roof. It also promotes movement and balance, a sense of balancing for the young kids when they use them. Continuing the idea of the circle and also the logo of the Sparkle Thoughts, our client's logo, which is basically a rainbow spectrum, we decided to create a mosaic color spectrum in front of every classroom because, you know, for young kids, they are not only learning about alphabets, but perhaps tactile and color sensations are also important to them. So this idea of the mosaic spectrum going through every front of the classrooms, perhaps it is another way to identify, for them to identify the classrooms. And we also specially created logos that are comprised out of segments of circles to give a hint of animals, and it's again to spark their imagination. There is again no right or wrong, but each of this and each of their classrooms has this logo together with the idea of the color spectrum. So what you see is actually a composite of different classrooms. And as you go around the spectrum, and we imagine as they grow up in years from 1 year old to 2 years old to 3 years old, they will proceed to the different color spectrum. The interior of the classrooms, and if you notice the scale, we are really designing for users that are not more than 1 meter tall. So on the photo that on the left, we created a glass panel on the low height below the notice board that was meant for the teachers. So this low level glass panels was really meant for the children to see their classmates when they pass through. And on the other side, on the photo in the middle, these are the miniature wash basins for the children to wash their hands. Okay, that's just a glimpse of the interior of the classrooms. For this layout, we worked with early childhood educators to understand the pedagogy needs in order to create the different sorts of furniture. A glimpse of the corridor at about 4 or 5 p.m. The nice thing about the Oculus, it really lets in a ray of light that moves around at the different hours of the day, and it really enriches the light and shadows, the sensorial experience of the internal space. The rooftop, now we come to the last floor. The rooftop is really a ring of playgrounds. And to design this, we designed this in conjunction with our landscape architect. And the idea is, it's as they go around the ring, they experience different modes of play. It's almost like slices of pizza, right? Different net play, deck play, greenery, even urban planting and all that. And throughout the years, these slices may be lifted up and switched and changed as we go along. So there you have it. This is the roof elevation. Being situated in quite a dense housing estate, we were very mindful of the fifth elevation, the roof. So we strive to keep it as clean as possible. If you look carefully, that the edge of the gray roof, that's where all the aircon compressors are. It's situated behind a layer of mesh, so there's really nothing exposed on the roof. All you see are greenery, playground, and the Teflon roof. The elevation, and we're almost at the last slide now. So during this is a quite interesting story. During the opening ceremony, the children were asked to paint their impression of the childcare, having spent a few months there, and they created this masterpiece, and basically their impression of the building is just circles and circles of different colors and modes. So we thought that they really understood the idea. And this is the last slide. It shows different activities happening at different decks. What this is, after having spoken to the teachers and the principal, the sense of space is something that they really appreciate, because this expanse of space lets the teachers program whatever childhood play activities that they want. And also the principal herself appreciates the circular form, because it is more like a panopticon, right? Wherever you are in the circle, she can observe what's happening in each of the classrooms. And interestingly, according to her, the children feel they are friendlier towards strangers, because in her opinion, it's because the children feel safe in this room. They are always in this circular courtyard, because there are always teachers around. So they're actually friendlier towards strangers or parents that they have not seen before. So this is something that's interesting that we learned, an outcome. So yeah, that's it. That's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Tuing, for sharing. Yeah, I was seeing so many comments from the chat group and chat box. It's really nice. Keep them coming. So We will move on to the next architect presenter, and that is architect Mok Chipang from Malaysia. And he will be sharing on the project Tamarind Square. Great project. I know that when you drive on the highway from the airport towards KL, you can actually catch a glimpse of it, and it looks spectacular. Mok graduated from Deakin with a Bachelor of Architecture, and he went on to take his Master of Architecture in Urban Design, specializing in urban design from UCLA, California. He has worked in Yunken Freeman Architects in Melbourne, known for BHP House, Maya Music Bowl, and Eagle House. And after Deakin, he joined Architect Kesatuan for worked on 9 vocational schools throughout West Malaysia. And in UCLA, he studied under Charles Moore, Barton Myers, Eugene Kapper, Charles Jenks, amongst others. He joined Daya Bina Architect and had several awards. DBKL PAM Aga Khan Urban Design Competition for Golden Triangle KL Lake Club Competition, and several others. And he later joined Robert Peck von Hartel, Treadle One in Melbourne in 1988. And he returned to Malaysia in 1991 and started his company, Gary's Architects, with Jeffrey Clyde. So we're very excited to have Architect Mok with us today. And Mok, the floor is yours. Please go ahead and share your screen. Do make sure you are unmuted. We cannot hear you for now.
Yeah. All right. You can hear me now. Thank you very much, Yijun, for the introduction. Here to present Tamarind Square, which is located in Cyberjaya. For those who are not familiar, it is somewhere in between KL and KLIA along the multimedia super corridor. And within Cyberjaya itself, we are surrounded by quite a lot of residential parcels, as well as schools. I'm surprised that the data shows me 16 plus schools. And we're along the main thoroughfare, which is from MDEC, which is our IT provider controller. And the site is 6 hectares or 14.5 acres of space. Okay. When we sat down with the client, Peter Chan, to ask ourselves what would we do in Cyberjaya, which is actually quite barren of a town center. It's filled with IT centers, the call centers, etc. There was nowhere that you could say, okay, this is the heart of Cyberjaya. And we weren't going to do another air-conditioned mall. So Peter Chan came up with the idea that, well, we want to provide a space where people can gather, connect, bond. And to do that, the suggestion was to remember the days when life was under a tree. You know how wonderful it was that you could sit under a tree and have a drink and all that. And of course, being a development, you've got to make your financials stack up, marketing, got to be able to sell it. So when we started looking at this, we said, okay, as a urban center where people will congregate, what examples would you look at? So we looked at squares in Europe. And because we are tropical, we said, okay, we should have a lot of trees in the center, like the squares in London, Leicester Square, etc. We also want to be able to connect various parts of the building, but not in a straight form. We want to make it a little bit more adventurous, a little bit more of a hike and seek sort of thing. And when we look at the Asian model, which is a lot more intimate, it's a series of courtyards, perhaps with a central hall in the middle. So the brief came down to a place to gather, to learn, to share, to reflect, to connect, have conversations, forge friendships, create memories, and all sorts of exchanges under the sky. And physically, as a built form, we want it to be intimate. We want it to engage everybody with the building, to connect the courtyards, have an oasis that's enclosed, make it accessible. And this is where the accessibility is every day that this building doesn't have doors or gates to shut it out. So it's very public. It's like your Italian piazza. And it's a marketplace where all ages, all society, everyone can take place and take part of it. So we looked at the building. Will it be a building in landscape like any other air-conditioned box? Or would it be a series of semi-detached buildings that will perhaps sell very well? We could get 78 units, but it takes up the entire site. So the answer really is perhaps a hybrid, where we stack the semi-Ds on top of each other, and we got a double layer of semi-D. Then the building itself will take the center stage, and we carve out a north square, south square, and a center square. Now, very key to the success of any commercial project is that the flow, the movement of traffic, foot traffic, it is paramount for the success, that every retailer, everyone coming to this can see where it is going. It's going to be very legible. So in terms of having three layers of in concentric rings, we start off with the external layer, which is the street and the road, which is on three sides. Then we move on to the internal road, which is the podium driveway, which is this darker color. It goes around the building in sort of a figure eight. It bodes well to, I guess, the Chinese in the audience, figure eight, but I'd rather look at it as an infinity symbol. It doesn't stop, it goes on. Then the last part of it is the pedestrian movement. So you see in the dotted line, it comes through the northeast corner, enters the upper north gate to the north court, center court, south court, and then into the Soho. And when we look at this, eventually, it reminds me of the time when I went to Tripoli in Libya, where we experienced the Medina as you come from the outside road, the first the slide where you see the cars and the people of the archway. It's full of cars, trucks, buses. It's bustling, it's noisy. You go one or two layers in, the street's narrow, and you would see that it's only narrow enough for a horse cart. And you go 2 or 3 rings further, and you see that it narrows down to only human traffic. So in this sense, Tamarind Square has a lot of that similarity, where you come from the outside, very busy, you come to the inside, just the roads, and you come further in, the third layer, it's really people in the oasis. The bottom photograph is of Porto. Now, because we realize that this is slightly on a hill and we're climbing up to the North Court, which is literally raised 10 meters above the street level. So if you look at Porto, the main thoroughfare, which is a river, and as you proceed into the town square where the spire is, you are climbing up many layers. So this building, Tamarind Square, has the layering of both vertical as well as horizontal. Some sections to show you how it works. The car park is neatly hidden below the squares, North Court, South Court, etc. On the right-hand side, you see the double-stacked semi-D retail and enterprise building. So when we stack it, we get double exposure for the people in the semi-D from the main street. And on the long section, you see that the North Court has the center court raised that ties in with the South Court. And the center court covers the main entrance. That's the only entrance that is covered from the rain. So this is the section of the building. The size of it as 14.5 acres literally covers 2 city blocks. So that's quite large in terms of the size of it. Now, aerial view, you can see it is almost like your city gate, where we call it the portal at the northeast entrance. The walls on both sides are like your city walls. It's very protective. It's hiding everything that's inside. And when you enter the city gates from an aerial view, you can see it's like a horseshoe, so it's a little bit welcoming. Now the trees are really grown. You can't actually see much of it from the street. And at a street view, you can see that the semi-Ds is facing the street. The ground floor is virtually covered by the trees. You still have a continuous corridor with the car park in front. Yes, the green part is actually the car park. And finally, as you go inside the building, you are taken through the escalators. This is an external escalator as you climb up 10 meters to the podium driveway. And in this driveway, which is the circling around the upper levels of the semi-D, you find that there are many stairs and lift calls. They also remind me of the turrets that watchtowers of cities of old. Then we come to the gateway, the main gateway to the courtyards. Again, we avoided the covered carport. So you're actually going to drop off in the open with the green. And as a pair of gateway entrances, this reminds me of, say, the piazzas in Italy or Del Popolo, where you have two towers. And as you enter through these two main buildings that's flanking the entrance, it's as grand as the gallery in Milan. You know, it's tall, it's inviting, it's full of trees. Then you come to the real gem of Tabernet Square. It's the North Court, which is filled with greenery, which is very unexpected. And as you are in the floor itself, you look up, you can see the labyrinth of connections. You can see the sky that is carving out of both the buildings, forming yet a courtyard in a courtyard. And we're connected on all floors via external stairs. Then the pinnacle, this is absolute magic. I think this is the paradise of Tabernet Square as well as Abijah. There are 7 pinnacles, courtesy of Seksan, and these are fully covered by vines. You can see it's growing lusciously, wildly, and many things can happen instead. You can rest, you can have retail. There's a lot of retails on the ground floor, and you can recreate. Then you come to the center court, which is actually the heart of it. It's almost like your town hall, your meeting space. The image on the bottom is the main driveway drop-off. Then what do you do in this big space? We could put in food trucks. We can put in a big TV screen, and that's where we watched a World Cup. You could have a Zumba session here. I mean, it's really acting as a town center. South Court is a little bit quieter, where the community center is, and it's very formal, very rectilinear. It's got breakout spaces. The rooftops are essentially spaces that is enclosed by the terracotta roofs, which harks back to the days of the old shop lots in Jonker Street and as Duxton and all that. It really old-fashioned, old feel, the old feel of the buildings. Then when we ask ourselves, have we actually fulfilled what the client's vision is, which is public participation? So in the end, when we look at it, what have we created? I think it's like a reinvention of a traditional shop house, but very modern, very up to date. It is devoid of air conditioning in the public spaces. It is cooling. It's a village. And when you ask yourself, post-construction evaluation, have we succeeded? And these days with social media, it is instant and it is spontaneous. These are all photographs from people who share in Instagram and Facebook. And I think there is a lot to be said about not having an air-conditioned shopping center, so to speak. So thank you very much, Eugene. Big thank you for Four Nations for allowing us this opportunity to share with you. Thank you also to Peter Chan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mo. Wow, that's a really, really beautiful project. I really want to go there. Actually, haven't seen it before, but it's really spectacular. Thank you so much for sharing. I can really see your urban design training from the US. I can see you are so well traveled, and it's really nice to see you fusing all these character from different places. Okay, we will move on to Hong Wei, and he will be presenting on the Oasia Downtown. And a little bit of background information on Hong Wei. Paul Hong Wei, he is a director in WOHA, and he joined WOHA after graduating from National University of Singapore in 2006, and he was made director in 2018. With keen interest in community and greenery integration, he brings additional focus on social and environmental sustainability into his projects. Complementing his professional work, Hong Wei is a certified ISO auditor, Green Mark manager, and universal design assessor. He was featured in URA's third edition of 20 Under 45 Architect Exhibition in 2017. And I'd just like to give a bit of background information on the company WOHA, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. WOHA was founded by Wong Man Sam and Richard Hessel in 1994. The Singapore-based practice focuses on researching and innovating integrated architectural and urban solutions to tackle the problems of the 21st century, such as climate change, population growth, and rapidly increasing urbanization. WOHA has accrued a varied portfolio of work and is known for its distinctive approach to biophilic design and integrated landscaping. The practice applies a systems thinking approach to architecture and urbanism in their building design, as well as their regenerative master plans. Their rating system to measure the performance of buildings, as laid out in their book, Garden City, Mega City, has garnered interest internationally and is being adopted into construction policies in several cities. Okay, Hong Wei, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Yep, ready. I'll share screen.
Thank you.
Yiqing, just to check, you can see the slides full screen, right?
I'm seeing the main slide with the thumbnails on the left side in the column. Now can, yes.
Okay, all good?
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, okay, good afternoon all. Singapore, as you know, is one of the most dense cities in the world. And with limited land, the only way to intensify and densify is to go upwards. So on a city scale, we often question, can city have high density with high amenities? Can cities be more humane, healthy, and livable? And can buildings be reimagined as an infrastructure with greenery and amenity? So Oasia Hotel Downtown, it's our proposed prototype for a tropical mixed-use skyscraper, one that is green, sustainable, and livable. I'll share on the design concepts and strategies. This is a land sale site measuring about 47 meters by 47 meters as part of the city grid, and the site is bounded on 4 sides with roads. It is located at the fringe between the historic Chinatown district and the CBD, the Central Business District, and housing districts. This is an early concept sketch that we presented to our client, Far East. As you can see, there will be sky gardens and vertical greenery. And Far East liked the idea of encapsulating the Singapore experience of a city in the garden in a building. Far East wanted a mixed-use development to take advantage of the location between the CBD and Chinatown. There are 3 main programs: the office, the hotel, and the club hotel in the building. And we propose to stack them into stacks of L-shaped blocks that are flipped to opposite corners to orientate towards different parts of the city. Sky terraces, the same area as the building footprint, are inserted in between the programs. And so we have 4 layers of ground up vertically. These sky terraces are open spaces for amenities, pools, and gardens, so that the occupants are never far from greenery and common space. The space between the sky terraces form 20 to 30 meters tall internal breezeway atriums, which are sheltered by the next terrace above. As a building in a city, we wanted a distinctive form that fronts both the CBD as well as Chinatown. And we created a lantern effect by covering the blocks and terraces with a red envelope in expanded aluminium mesh. And what makes the building more special is the living skin. The envelope comprised of planters on every story behind the mesh. And in a way, it becomes a living artwork of nature that changes with light and shade, rainfall, and the natural cycle of plant life. Oasia is a mixed-use building, as mentioned. Locating the core in the center will create congestions and conflict in operation. So our major move was to pull apart the core into the 4 corners, as seen in red in the slide, to create separate vertical circulations, as well as opening up the floor plate at the sky terrace for use. Now, with the cores at the corner, we now can have 360 panoramic views at each sky terraces, something that is not possible with a central core. As mentioned, we have 3 stacks of 5 to 8 story blocks overlooking 3 breezeway atrium, respectively. And the building also accommodates 4 sky terraces with more than 6,000 square meters of decks, pools, and garden. The facade itself comprised of 25,000 square meters of expanded mesh with about 1,800 numbers of GFRC planters. So the effect is that we get a garden building right within the dense CBD. So the vibrant colors of reds and green stands out from the hues and glass of the surrounding curtain wall towers. And the building being next to the heritage Chinatown, with its facade in color, pattern, and texture, relates to the fine-scale shophouses, but still projecting a contemporary image. This area view captures our layered approach of the building with its 5 stratum: the ground, office, hotel, club, and roof. I'll bring you through each stratum. This is the ground stratum from 1st to 5th story. It comprises of the drop-off, entrance, restaurant, above ground car parking, M&E, and back of house spaces. Here you can see we brought the facade down to the ground, and in a way the building takes roots with greenery climbing up. For us, it was important that the building's greenery can be enjoyed by both the people on the street as well as public from afar. The office stratum is from 6 to 11 story. There is no dead ends, allowing for natural cross ventilation. And this sky terrace has informal meeting areas and a pool deck on 6th story, which also works as an event and networking spaces for tenants to come together. The hotel stratum is from 12th to 20th story. Guests check in to this hotel not on ground level, but at this garden lobby that is naturally ventilated, not air-conditioned. And this sky terrace has a lawn in the middle, surrounded by pavilions with casual seating areas. The club stratum is from 21st to 26th story. In a way, it is a urban oasis in the city with club facilities, pool decks, and camping ports. With the cores tucked to the corner, the breezeway atrium opens the building up and frames the views of the city in a 3-dimensional way. Last but not least, the rooftop stratum is on the 27th story. It is anchored by a restaurant, flanked on both sides by sun pools and deck that is completely open to sky. And by tucking the M&E equipment and tank to the sides and below the roof terrace, we free up 80% of the roof for programs and amenity. So by day, the building becomes a green landmark in the CBD. And at night, it glows like a lantern beacon in the urban landscape. The expanded aluminum mesh, we have done so, mix them in 5 different shades of red to mimic the natural colors of flowers from a bud to a flower. The mesh over time will recede to the back as speckles and patches of red as the greenery takes over, somewhat like flowers within a vertical foliage. This climate not only soften the profile of the building, they also provide a layer of shading on top of the mesh, lowering the temperature across the skin. So overall, the building achieves a green plot ratio of 1,100%, which compensate for the lack of green replacement on 10 similar size sites. There are more than 30 species of trees and shrubs at the 4 sky terraces. They reinforces the unique character of each terrace with shade, color, and texture. And there are also more than 20 species of climbers used on the facade based on their adaptability to sun and shade. And the climbers create a continuous 200-meter tall green surface that connects the 4 terraces, creating a vertical ecosystems for insects and small animals. Within the facade, all the planters are located behind the corner cores on every story, with proper access walkways for easy maintenance, and without the need for any externalized roof access or gondola. And all the planters here are watered by an automated irrigation system to avoid wastage. This is one of our favorite image of the building. It does not only look like a tree, it essentially performs like one too. So like a tree, it breathes, it metabolizes, it photosynthesizes. And also like a tree, it protects, it shields, it shelters, create natural habitats and attracting biodiversity. And it shows nature can coexist with building. We have seen the greenery attracting bees and birds and climbing animals like squirrels. So in a way, if cities have buildings that incorporate and values ecology and biodiversity, we can have cities that coexist with nature. And we all know greenery helps to cool hard surfaces or the hot air of the urban environment through shading and evapotranspiration. So this is a thermographic image taken at 1 p.m. showing Oasia's facade up to 30° cooler than the typical curtain wall surface. And this will also mean less radiative or convective heat transfer back to the urban environment. So in summary, Oasia is our thoughts on a prototype that reimagines the tropical tower as a responsible, livable, and sustainable high-rise environment that contributes back to the city. It also demonstrates the coexistence of city and nature, engaging and benefiting people both within and with the neighborhood. And it also shows building can be an important component in the city by improving the quality of open space, community space, and green spaces in city. And last but not least, I think it also shows density can be open, social, and green. Thanks, Ichin, and thanks, everyone.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you, Hongwei. I've actually seen the building several times. I've been in it, but my jaw still drops every time I see you guys present it. It's amazing how you can combine the scale and texture within such a large tower and still retain the poetics in the project. Thank you for sharing, Hongwei. We will move on now to another high-rise project in Indonesia. And the project will be presented to us by architect Teok. Here's a brief introduction. Prasetyo Adi, IAI, AA, IAP, and GP, or we call him Teok, is a professional architect and urban designer. He is a founding partner and managing director of PDW, an award-winning design firm in Jakarta. Teok is one of the core founders of Green Building Council in Indonesia. He finished his bachelor degree from Institute of Technology Bandung Architecture School in 1995 and a Master of Urban Development and Design from the University of New South Wales in Australia in 1998. In May 2014, he was selected as one of the members of Architecture and Planning Review Board of Jakarta, and he sits on the advisory board of Architecture School in ITB. He is the recipient of Leadership of Environment and Development, LEAD Scholarship in Sustainable Development, 2004, and the Australian Leadership Award Scholarship in 2009. He has also won awards in several design competitions, an IAI Award in 2018, IAI Jakarta Awards 2020, and the Singapore Institute of Planners Award, SIP, in 2017 and 2019. Very exciting to have Teok with us. Teok, if you are ready, you can go ahead and share the screen. We look forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you, Yi. Thank you, everyone, and it's a great opportunity to be here. Is my screen on? Yeah. Sorry. You see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah. Good evening. I'm going to present one of the projects that we do in Jakarta. It's an office tower. This is the like any other big buildings that a lot of people are involved in the project. This building is located in Golden Triangle of Jakarta. We call it Golden Triangle, the main road in Jakarta. In your left, then now they are having a bus rapid transport system, and in the future there will be LRT going there. Jakarta is gone through massive transportation infrastructure development at the moment. It sits under in the mixed-use development. So behind there are 19 towers, residential towers, and also commercials and offices. But it tucked behind the main road, so it's 1 block away from the main street. Sits inside the plan, a design development area. We started with the concept that we take advantage of the land itself, the contour, that this is first building of a 3-hectare site from a new developer that is going to build a new a building for the flagship development. So what we are trying to do is to put the people on the ground. So we're talking sustainability not only about the building itself, but the social, the people movement, and how we because in Jakarta then was still very much car oriented up to now. We try to remove the car. We put the car behind and disappear into a parking garage. So it's unlike the other development in Jakarta that the car is becoming main feature accidentally because they put it in the front and people love the car so much they drive everywhere. In here we try to get the pedestrian movement into the building and also create active street frontage as well as given a commercial opportunity to the tenant. So the main idea was is the linkages between the site. It become a transition area for people to go pass through this building. They are drawn into it, and also it will also develop into the other part of the site. You're also thinking about accessibility and creating open space, semi-public open space that is on the private land. So, to bring people in for to bring up the commercial value of this building. And also, of course, the passive design strategy, we look into the building orientation. The challenge in Jakarta is how we define Indonesian tropical tall building, not only from the climate point of view, but also from the cultural point of view, because we don't usually live in a high rise. Usually, we only have like very sprawl, low rise residential until the 70s, and then 80s. In the 80s, 90s, they start to pop out a new tall building, and then those buildings were built before the 2000s. Now the challenge is how we redesign, recreate something that is responsive to the climate, but still current. We look into the massing. Of course, the developer like the efficiency, so we keep the shape of the building rectangular with a central core. Is very highly usual office space, office building. But when we are thinking about the envelope, we look into minimizing the cooling load of the building, as well as the also the easy maintenance of the building, and how we can juggle within the facade itself, from the horizontal sun shading with maintenance access, with no building maintenance unit required, because it's relatively easy to walk up and down from the roof and from the ground. And how we use sun shading, it's purposely built fixed, because we want to first, we don't want the broken parts become one of the issue in the operation later, but also give a building a shading and dynamic feel when you go around it. So the shading will mostly enclose from in the west and the east, but relatively open to the north and especially the south. And as you can see in the section there, that's sort of a maintenance access, not for the building users, but for the maintenance person to go around. And we go around also exploring the use of the vertical fin that will be also the main feature of the building. As you can see that this is a monochrome color. It's aluminum extrusion, the vertical fin. With this, we can reduce the specification of the glass, and it's also relatively cheaper facade to other curtain wall. But then we add the value on the fin and the horizontal canopy to reduce the cooling load of the building, and it really blends into the nature. The yellowish brown color of the fin, the vertical fin, also gives the different shading in different time of day, and even if you walk or drive through it, you can see the difference. And the blue facade behind the curtain wall in all is its tendency. I was discussing about building efficiency. It's relatively efficient. Is for the almost 90% of the building can be leasable. And in Jakarta, as it is also important to look into the modular, the module of the column from the parking up to the roof and the ceiling. So we try to make every material as modular as possible to reduce the waste, especially waste on site. So all prefabricated material, acoustic ceiling, the glass panel. We discussed with the applicator how we can make the glass module as efficient as possible, and also at the basement part that we can we can use effectively the parking space without losing unused spaces in the basement parking, because basement is very expensive as well as unsustainable to have a lot of basement. So we take also the advantage of the site, as I mentioned before, that it should be accessible, universal design. Part of the site will be covered for a deck, for commercial deck, and underneath there is a parking space. And we create retail space within the building, and hardscape and soft landscaping, while we put the tuck in the lobby behind, and we'll continue to other stage of the development for drop off. So it will be continuous, but it's not the main feature of the building. So the car will disappear, taking the advantage of that contour. Also in the lobby, we explore a little bit about the finishing of the core wall in the lobby, that we are using smaller pieces, but make as a featured wall from natural stone. It is a smaller cut, so we are not using or wasting a big slab and putting a big slab, but it still look well designed. And this is the lobby that also can be used for function. Next is this is the building when it's just completed. We put water feature also to cool off. So the grass in the front is on top of the basement car parking, and on the left is more urban landscape, trees, and outdoor sitting area, which is relevant to what happened now during the pandemic. We don't build any fence, still very secure. We try to get people in. We're using landscaping as part of a barrier. So instead of vertical wall, we are opening up and give access to pedestrian in certain area that connected to the lobby and also the overall building. This is when the building has already completed and fully operational. It's a nice environment to sit outside when if it's not raining, and it's now it's an office building, but there are some cafe and retail on the ground on the mezzanine level, actually, because it is a ground to the west, but it's the lobby itself is one level below, and people are freely move. So it's in Jakarta, we are lacking of public and green open space. So this is a good space for people to pass through without having to go through heavy security like a building in Jakarta, almost non-existent of security officers. And if you look there, we try to blend the building with public space outside. You can see there that behind the trash bin is actually already the property line, and we purposely plant some shaded trees for shading for pedestrian. And the reflecting pond purposely designed to cool off the open space, the deck. And this is from other angle to from the pedestrian plaza outside. And yeah, this is also during the evening for the coffee shop and all the restaurants in front of the building. And yeah, it's looking from the main street towards the building. And as it's in a design area, developed area, you can see this building from different angle and attract pedestrian movement to get people in Jakarta away from the car. As a comparison, the white blue building in the front is famous hospital in Jakarta, and the black building in the back is 50 stories office building. We are in the middle of it. So what we're trying to do is create a building that is challenging the tropical high rise in Indonesia. This is the view from the other side, from the north. You can see that on the right side of the building is access stair for people to access up and down for maintenance of the building. And this is the land towards us. The foreground is also belongs to the developer for next stages of the development. This is my slide, last slide. Thank you for your attention, and it's been a great pleasure to be speaking in these 4 nations. And thank you for Yichin and all other speakers and participants in this breakout room.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Theo. Yeah, I really appreciated your sharing. I really like your hand sketches, and I can see that you actually pay a lot of care and attention to sculpting the ground plane, the circulation, keeping it open, even though it's a kind of skyscraper kind of typology. Hopefully we'll have more time to discuss. We're running a bit late, maybe because of the technical glitch earlier, so we're about 10 minutes behind. So let's move on to the last speaker, who is Pearl Chi from WOHA, and she will be presenting Kampong Admiralty. A little bit of background on Pearl. Pearl is a director at WOHA, and as a director, she leads its project teams through design execution to project construction and implementation of innovative and award-winning projects, which includes both private and public projects. Pearl graduated with a Bachelor of Architecture from the School of Architecture in National University of Singapore and is a member of both the Board of Architects and the Singapore Institute of Architects. Complementing her professional work, Pearl is also a Green Mark professional and a Universal Design Assessor. Pearl is from WOHA, so I will not go through the company biography again because we have heard it just now. So I think it's a good time to pass on to Pearl to share her very, very, very interesting building, Kampong Admiralty.
Thank you, Yichin. I'm going to, oh, sorry, I'll just turn on the
All right.
sound first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can see my screen?
Yes, good.
Yeah, okay. So hi, everyone. This is Kampong Admiralty. We were able to work on this project with multiple government stakeholders to come up with a new prototype. This prototype actually takes on issues that society across the world face. Kampung spirit. How do we keep this community spirit alive, especially in the very highly urbanized areas? And also the second thing was family unit shrink, and how do we help our senior citizens in our community where they are staying on their own, that they are well integrated and have access to all the help and services to lead an independent life. Is the slide moving? Sorry. Okay. So we'll watch a very short video first. This contemporary village is located right next to the train station. So it is a prime location of real estate value. The building and its public space are connected to this public transport network. It has become a very natural focal point in the area. The overarching theme of the project is connection and integration. And this is a new prototype that combines a very interesting mixed use, combines social housing for the elderly with public space and park, medical health and recreational amenities, retail shops, food center, and urban farm. This integrated project makes intergenerational activities and social interaction possible. We want to make sure that the residents are not pushed to the periphery of our community. Elderly who have their homes in this development can plug into the amenities and public spaces. Here, we see that they enjoy the daily conveniences and barrier-free access at the doorstep of their homes, are able to live active life. Okay, this is a site plan showing the site. It's in a very centralized location in a mature housing estate, and the typical housing estate in Singapore is mainly residential area and then quite a standalone amenities at the center of the estate. Okay, in the next, the site area is roughly just under 1 hectare, so it's about 9,000 square meter. It's a greenfield site, and we have 4 key components in this building: commercial, medical center, community, and social housing. So in the next few slides, I will use these diagrams to explain how we actually layer the programs on the site. Our first move was to put the commercial, which is the supermarket, retail shops, and food center on the ground layer. So by compacting the footprint, we are able to free the ground floor for a plaza area. Our next move was to overlay the very large footprint of the medical center over the plaza. So with this, it provides shade and shelter for the plaza, which is conducive for usability in our tropics weather. And so because we lifted the medical center to the mid layer, so all the weather activities can now take place. in a fully public, porous, and pedestrianized plaza below. So this high ceiling also allows natural daylight and breezes through, ensuring a very high degree of thermal comfort for people using the plaza. And next, we overlay the community uses of a quieter nature. In this case, it's the childcare, elder care, and social housing to the upper layer. And over these, we created a new elevated ground level by introducing a sort of like a community sky park where the young and old can come together. And topographically, we put the gardens and urban farms. It adopts this topographic architectural language of terraces and hills. And so at the foothill of this community sky park, we introduced the apartment blocks of social housing for elderly. And the hills, you can see in the diagram, effectively shielded the apartments from the train noise which is behind it. So instead of a standalone program, it's now an integrated urban village and a very tropical community space. I moved on to the building section, which I will take you through the different layers. The basement are for car parking, and the next layer, which is the lower layer, comprises 2 floors. The ground floor is a very porous plaza that brings the community together. And the ground is designed to prioritize pedestrian circulation through the building to the train station. The Tropical Plaza is a very bright and breezy double volume space that serves as what we call a community living room. It is activated by shops and a food center at the upper layer. And the oculus in the middle opens up to light air and even views of the community sky park that's at the upper level. So you can see right through. And the plaza now is a very popular space and provides daily convenience to residents. We moved on to this middle layer here. We spread the medical center over 2 floors. The footprint actually covers the entire site. Yeah, and in terms of planning layout, all the internal waiting and circulation areas are organized around a center garden courtyard. Architecturally, from the outside, the medical center is like an umbrella, sheltering and shading the plaza below. And it's also acting as a support for the landscape above. This is the interior of the medical center. We want to leverage on the biophilic effect that the nature has on humans. So when you come into the medical center, it's instantly encountering natural daylight and green and giving you a sense of well-being and healing. So the waiting areas with daylight from the garden courtyard, as well as even in the gym rooms and training rooms, the landscape and light are reflected into the room. Okay, now we're at the upper layer of the building, which comprises a quiet, more private community facilities. So this is the 6th floor, and that's where the community sky park sort of forms the new elevated ground level for childcare, for elder care, community gardens, and playgrounds. This is a view from the apartment building looking out to this sky park. And the childcare and the senior care are side by side, and they are also adjacent to landscape outdoors. So this adjacency of program brings the young and old together, encouraging bonding. They can exercise and play together and even socialize with each other while they are taking care of an urban community farm. So the idea of putting the farm on the roof encourages the elderly to be active. Of course, we provide barrier-free ramps and lifts to help people with a wheelchair. The last section is the social housing for the elderly. It's 2 towers of 140 units, and every floor we have 8 units, and the units are modular and are designed with barrier-free access. They are arranged in pairs. So you see the green highlighted areas, it's the main doors of each pair facing each other. Yeah. with actually, okay, I'm going to that in a while. So this is a view of the apartment blocks on the left-hand side. It's sort of grow out of that sky park and surrounded by large landscape. Okay, this is that area where the pair of units faces each other, and we actually intentionally put so-called a buddy bench between them to encourage them to keep watch over each other or to make friends and bond with each other. Okay, just a little bit about environmental strategies. All the public spaces and apartments are designed for natural ventilation, and so there's no reliance on air conditioning. And we have very deeply recessed precast facade, and it's also kind of having very colorful facade to enhance visual orientation. Okay, and all the roof surfaces are landscape, which helps to reduce thermal load to the building. Embracing landscape brings benefit, so being able to look out to greeneries and being close to nature, it's something that brings a lot of advantage and benefits to people living there. So we have a planting palette that encourages biodiversity. We actually have observed a good number of species of insects, birds, and fruit bats. We did actually a post-occupancy comparison between the building and a nearby park of about the same size. And interestingly, the number of species in the building was actually higher than the landscape park on the ground. Yeah. So the landscape in the building can perform in a very good way in terms of biodiversity. And if we multiply this in terms of scale, if you multiply this building, 10 such buildings is actually equivalent to 10 hectares of city neighborhood park. So imagine actually the future of the city if we translate this to the scale of the urban planning. So this is just some figures we calculated over the site area. We've managed to achieve greenery of 110% of the site area. And in terms of common spaces that people in the building share with each other is about 150% of the site area. So this is what the building has accomplished. Okay, this is my last slide. Yeah, Kampong Admiralty is a new prototype of mixed use. Something that actually attracted a lot of interest, both from everywhere, that people are interested how this project layered public space, layered semi-public rooftop farm and garden with private homes. Yeah, and the project is inclusive and is actually quite successful. And we're very happy that the government has made a commitment to use this prototype in the other towns. Okay, with that, thank you. Over to you, Yi-Ching.
Great. Pearl, thank you so much for sharing the beautiful project. I think it's really a very appropriate project to end off this series of 5 talks, because I think you are really challenging the high density and multiple programming, challenging the typology and how to fit them all together and still kind of bind them together as a whole. So I think it's a great achievement, actually. We are coming to the end of this webinar, but we do have a Q&A session. I'm conscious of time, and I know that some of you may want to move on to your dinner and have other things to do, but I'd like to at least have, say, 5-10 minutes of discussion. Later on, before we go, I'd like to take a group photo of this breakout room with everyone's camera on. So perhaps I would first just kind of make a few observations about all the 5 projects. And I find that each of the project challenges the typology of achieving density. in very different ways, yet I see that there are some similarities in terms of the playing with the section and use of courtyards to bring light and air inside a very thick building. I'd like to maybe ask first the five speakers to give a kind of first right to ask a question. Between the five speakers, I'd like you all to maybe offer to let you all start off asking a question of maybe your fellow presenters before I open it up to the floor.
I'll start first. I'm a big fan of Kampong Admiralty. In fact, I've been there so many times. Every time I travel to Singapore, I make it a point to drop by and take a look at it. The question I have is, how do you manage to contain the demands of various government agencies? Was it an easy task to satisfy all of them? And did anyone perhaps got a short end of the stick?
Yeah, it's a very common question posed to me actually. What is really good is that although there are 7 agencies involved, there is a steering committee with representatives from each of this, because in different organizations they do bring the excellence to the meeting, and sometimes it's not easy to try to have outcome from all these different requirements. Yeah, but I think the steering committee was led by chairman who actually has a vision for the project. I think the idea was to have a common vision. The idea was to say that, yeah, we put the organization behind what we agree to achieve in this project. Yeah, so I think the leadership of the steering committee makes a lot of difference.
One more question, if you allow me. How many iterations of the forms and the layering? I mean, you could have gone through vertical segments versus horizontal. How many models have you actually explored before this final version?
I think some of the programs was kind of quite fixed from the beginning. For example, the plaza space and so on. Yeah. So I think the many discussion was where to put the rest. Yeah. And obviously, everybody wants the ground space, and if not, they really find it really hard to embrace the higher floors. But actually, the facilities on the higher floor later realized that it was much safer to be on higher floor, because the landscape that actually became a safe refuge, yeah, for the young kids and elderly. Yeah, so I think it's true. I think we went through almost a year of developing the design, and the housing was also changed quite a few times, yeah, to make the apartment more useful. Yeah.
Looking for the speakers to maybe ask a question of the others. Theo, would you like to jump in with any comments or questions?
Well, I think we face the same challenge that the 4 nations are in the tropical countries. Also, maybe this relate to the design that the Tamarin Square as well, the Oasia, that put a lot of also the Kampong Admiralty, how you deal with the landscaping on that features on the top, how to maintain it, water it, is it local, because it will operation wise in Indonesia is just something that intensified, that you are encouraged in Jakarta, that you are encouraged to put planting on top. Before, it was like very difficult to get not permit, but to get to encourage developer to do that. But now there's an incentive to do that. So it's interesting for anyone, Mr. Puah Hong or Mr. Mok, to respond to answer to my curiosity. But I think it's a future of Asian tall building in a dense urban area, that you have to have high level of semi-public spaces. Thank you.
Maybe Hong Wei can.
Yeah, sure. I can take that question. With regards to landscaping and greenery, I think Singapore is quite peculiar in the sense that I think 10 to 15 years ago, we do not see many buildings with greenery up in tall buildings. And I think since then, Singapore as a country has been putting in more and more buildings with greenery for I think two main reasons. One, I think the government recognized the benefits of greenery, high-rise greenery. And in fact, I think there is a lot of guidelines and as well as incentives from the planning authority, the URA, that encourages the adaptation of sky-rise greenery in buildings. So, and of course, I think secondly, it also takes an enlightened client and developer, or enlightened and educated client and developer to be brave enough to have buildings of this amount of greenery. And I think it works both ways. For the building owner, for the hotel, the greenery becomes a identity where it's crucial in terms of the business or operation. So the better the building works, the more green the building works, the more business that can come. And I think for us also, and also as a architect, as well as a developer, we also recognize that the greenery is not just for the occupants, but also something that can be contributed back to the city. So it's not always taking land and from the public, but also contributing back to the city. As to maintenance, I think it's often a question that comes up. I think we do all know that there's no such things as no maintenance. I mean, at the end of the day, greenery is a living thing. It requires maintenance. And at Oasia, what we have done was to ensure that there is access behind the envelope, easy access, safe access for the gardeners to fertilize, to check the soil condition, so that the greenery is taken care of.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Hong Wei. Maybe I'd like to direct a question to Zhuyin. I think that your project is really successful in terms of the scale and also the speed at which you all managed to come up with this building. I think what's kind of different from the other projects is maybe how sanitation, or rather the cleanliness of this kind of environment for so many children is extra important. How do you feel about this kind of, how did you manage to balance this kind of need for very kind of clean textures and clean finishes with, of course, your desire to kind of incorporate more greenery, ventilation you managed to integrate very well, but how did you kind of work with that? I mean, I'm sure your palette was slightly constrained by the client, Could you share a bit about the process?
Sure. Actually, it's a constant struggle because before we designed this childcare, we did studies for particularly childcare in Japan and other places. Talking about childcare philosophy, they are slightly more open-minded. The interesting thing is they wouldn't mind so much that the children play in more, I would say, raw environment, like real landscapes, get their hands dirty. And even it's okay, even if they fall down and get some scratches here and there. So bringing back to our local context, perhaps it is more not so acceptable for our parents when they at the end of the day they collect their child and then they see, you know, patches of band-aids here and there. So that is a context which we need to always struggle with. And in fact, the oculus that I mentioned that that opens the center of the childcare to rain. So when there's a downpour, actually, the garden gets wet. And you know, in tropical weather, it is like super wet. And we had to really try very hard to convince the clients. And how do we do that? We basically had to do computer simulations to show that during various sizes of downpour, the area of the wet area is limited only to the particular region. And understandably, because they are very concerned that the children will slip and fall, you know, so there's always a safety issue. But we were happy to be able to achieve at least that little small victory. We had wanted to actually plant even more lush greenery. But unfortunately, we were limited by the time and budget, and of course the soil weight. So you know, if given another chance, opportunity to design the childcare, I would love it to have, like, you know, twice the amount of greenery, more plantings on natural soil, knowing for a fact that with that probably will come caterpillars and earthworms, you know, which again, it'll result in another round of kind of negotiation with the childcare educators. So, but I think it's good. I think it's a good first step. And I think for children, they really learn the best teacher is really nature. Instead of sealing them in a hermetic environment, for children from 0 to 4, they learn by touching, getting their hands dirty, getting wet in the rain, you know, and we strongly believe that. And yeah, we'll keep trying in the successive childcares that we are designing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I actually think it's really an achievement to fit 1,000 kids together. I have 3 in my house, is this enough? So 1,000 children at the same time, it's really not easy, and it's not really a high rise, so it's actually horizontal, so they can mix quite easily. You can't really compartment them. So I really think that's an achievement. Maybe I should open it up to the floor. I don't see any cues on the chat room. Anyone would like to ask a question? Anyone from the floor? Okay, while you all are thinking of a question, I'd like to ask Mr. Mock a question. I really admire your project, and I only start to appreciate more the complexity of the section, the levels, and the different kind of how you put things together in the overall whole. I'd like to understand a bit more about the tower of apartments on the site. How does that come into the whole master plan?
The tower is
flat block.
Yes,
yeah.
The tower is by Unit 1, another architect that came in halfway through the construction of the first phase, which is the Tamarind Square itself. So there was a lot of interaction in terms of getting the residents of the tower to connect with the building. So their swimming pool is actually like a large bridge plunging into the Tamarind Square, and they've done a wonderful job in such a tight space. In fact, their car park is within our car park, so we had to carve out spaces for them. They have to let us construct, and as they construct, they have to let us operate. So that part of the work was really, thankfully, good collaboration with all the consultants that was involved. Yeah.
I feel that the slab block and Tamarind Square actually works quite well together as a kind of slab and podium almost from afar. And I'm sure they contribute density and how do you say footfall or users to the programs that are richly contained within Tamarind Square.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Certainly the material that was common is concrete, and that has a wonderful pliability in shaping the building, and in fact they have a few parts in the high-rise Soho that looks like funnels or trumpets, you know, that suck it in venturi and everything. So it's a wonderful collaboration and marriage between the two.
Okay, great. Maybe Tio, last question for you. Actually, when you showed the towers from Jakarta in the early 80s, like the Paul Rudolph's famous tower, and I really saw a continuity with your new, sharp, modern profile. Are these kind of inspirations for you when you develop the curtain wall concept?
Well, actually, the Paul Rudolph design is something that inspire a lot of Indonesian architects at that time. We don't have the same approach per se, but that challenged us to practice in Jakarta as a tropical cities. So it's not like the international architect coming in and bring out their subtropical tower to Indonesia. That happens in several buildings. But in this case, Indonesian architect is challenged to look back into the modern Indonesian architecture that used to be responsive to our climate. So it's also a challenge, and it's also a good reference to look into other countries, especially these four nations that have similar challenges. There are so many buildings that tall buildings that coming up in this region, and something that we see that for my other honorable fellow speakers has already shown us. So this event is great to learn from each other as well.
Thank you so much, Tio. Okay, there are no questions in the chat, so I'm just going to conclude with some remarks, and I know some people are kind of leaving, so I will wrap it up soon. I'm just want to say that as the editor of the book, I'm really happy to see this come to fruition, and that all of you are here today to share ideas and designs from all four countries. So I hope that this dialogue will continue. I hope that when you get the book, whether it's an e-copy or you want to buy a physical copy later in the year, please refer to it. And I hope that everyone will keep up contact within the region, and not just, always, as we do, I'm guilty of it, look at American projects, European projects, Japanese projects. But I think that we really do have, as Tio says, a lot to learn from each other. So we're going to conclude. You all can go have a dinner. I can have my dinner. And have a good weekend ahead. I like to invite everyone to turn on their cameras, and I can just take a photo. I know you're shy, but maybe just for, a few seconds, we can see your beautiful faces. Thank you. Great, thank you. Let's have a few more faces. And I think we have 2 pages, so I'm going to put 2 screenshots. But the first one, hi Jermaine, my colleagues here, and Zison. Hey, come on, is that everyone? Everyone shy? Yay, thanks Vincent. Yeah, I'm gonna okay, on the count of 3. Okay, 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna take a picture now. Smile. Okay, another one. 3, 3, yeah, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I hope I managed to capture everyone in a favorable light. Great, thank you everyone for attending. Hope you have best of health and have a great weekend, and hopefully we can meet each other soon in the near future. Thank you everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you,
Thank
Eugene.
you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
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 Thank you.